It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome in to Take Command with Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman. We are in the mock draft war room, Logan, because it is time for our final mock draft before the draft. As everyone will be hearing this, it'll be Wednesday, maybe even Thursday if you've waited a day to listen. So draft week is here, Logan. It is time. We do not have time to waste because we have to pick 32 picks in 45 minutes. That is our task today.
Boom. Yeah, we should be all right, though. Some of these will be pretty easy, I think. Although I was looking at it last night, and there are a lot of teams that are, kind of up in the air in terms of trades and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be a lot of fun to do this.
No, I've done a couple of these at this point, variety of ways. This one, by the way, because we have done the 3-round mocks with the Commanders having 6 picks in the top 100, where we let the computer simulate the other teams. This is going to be Logan and I picking for every team in the first round. If we're feeling real frisky by the end, Logan, maybe we'll even do pick 33 for Carolina. Let the Panthers fans have... Mina always says she feels bad for them on her pod. Perhaps this is a way to get my mother to listen because she is a disgruntled Carolina Panthers fan. Perhaps we'll give Ellen pick 33. Okay, let's get into it. Pick one. It's pretty easy. It's a hit start draft for those that are watching on YouTube to be able to follow along. And we just pick Caleb Williams and we keep it moving.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's like maybe the best player in the draft. So this is a pretty easy decision to get him to Chicago, especially with all the weapons they have. That seems like the right pick there.
Yeah, you have a need at quarter. I mean, one, it's what they're going to do. So your mock draft just gets screwed up if you do something wacky there, because then the whole draft is off. 2, it's a quarterback needy team, the most quarterback needy franchise in the history of the NFL. They've never had a good one. They are going to get a good one. It seems like in Caleb Williams. He's the number one guy. Although I guess we can talk about now with Washington at 2, there is some debate over the number one guy. And especially I feel like it's not coming on late, but obviously these voices are getting louder in DC circles as of late, as Louis Riddick and Dan Orlovsky and others have said, like, I think Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback in this draft. And I think that, obviously there's others that think Drake May is right there. Our buddy Nate Tice thinks that they're neck and neck, and he would give a slight lean to May. His colleague Dane Brugler says they're pretty neck and neck, but would give a slight lean to Williams. And then there's this feeling that I can't get rid of that J.J. McCarthy is exactly what Washington is looking for as well. We know that they're looking for dudes, and J.J. McCarthy is one heck of a dude. And by the way, he's a really good quarterback. So, everyone that seems to have, like, I thought Daniel Jeremiah was super interesting on McAfee earlier in the week when he was like, I got to take my personal bias out of it because everyone just seems to think that Washington is taking Daniels. So I'm gonna say they're gonna take Daniels. But I also wonder, does anybody actually know anything? It feels like this is so locked down. So that's kind of where I'm at, Logan, which is confused. But where are you at as we currently sit? And we're going to hopefully do a longer dive into this. But for this mock, like, where are you at with number 2?
Yeah, I think I like the way you characterize that. I think right now, from what I understand and talking with, all the people that I talk to around the NFL, is that no one knows. So ultimately you have to go back to like what you think, what we think, and kind of make your decision. And, I think the thing for me is that I'd be happy with any one of those guys, right? JJ, Drake, or Jaden. And I'm not saying that facetiously. I'm not saying that to kind of cover my, to cover all the bases kind of thing. I really genuinely believe those guys are the guys, and I think, I probably would give a slight edge in my mind to JJ just because I really like what I see in terms of big time throws. I love the athlete. I love the leadership. But there's issues. Even though he's one of my favorite guys in the class, just from like a film standpoint, there's issues. Like, he doesn't have a lot of throws on tape. And how does that project? And we've seen that with Trey Lance, guys that don't have a lot of experience, that it's hard for them to learn on the job as they go. And then you look at Jaden, who I also love. I love watching his tape, right? He's got this dynamic ability to make plays with his legs. He's got this tight release. His footwork's excellent in the pocket. He's got this knack for making big-time plays when you need him, 2-minute red zone situations. But the offense there is so simple. It's like, how does this simplistic offense project to the next level? And it's really, really hard to do that. And you look at Drake May, and he's probably got the most, I don't want to say most NFL throws, but definitely the most big-time throws over the middle of the field. And it's the inconsistency with him. So I think they all have their warts. They all have their pluses. And I think if I had a gun to my head, I'd make the decision. I'd probably go Jaden Daniels, not because I don't love the other guys, but because I think his floor is so high, right? And, I think there's this idea you want to hit a home run with the quarterback, but also I just want to hit on the quarterback. Does that make sense? Like, I think everyone gets so caught up.
That's a great way to put it.
You get so caught up with, I need the next Patrick Mahomes. I need the next Justin Herbert. I need the next put in your quarterback here. But also I just need a guy who's going to be able to like manage this offense for the next 5 years. And I think as of right now, Jaden Daniels gives me the most confidence that's going to happen. Again, I love JJ. I love Drake. But I think with his ability to run the football, the mechanics are locked in, the playmaking ability, the stories about his work ethic, I would just lean that way ever so slightly. And again, it doesn't detract from those other guys in any other way. I just feel a little bit safer with him at the moment.
I tend to agree with you. I think JJ, you and I are on the same place with McCarthy. We're like, and I think that is admittedly our West Coast offense bias.
Yeah,
we're like,
no doubt.
It looks like what we think quarterback should look like when you watch what he does have on tape at Michigan. Drake is both intriguing and terrifying for reasons that have long been discussed. And Jaden is a guy that just has a calm demeanor about him and a command of what he's doing that is really appealing. And I think that's why his tape is so enjoyable to watch, is because he just looks like he's in control at all times. I was joking with Anthony the other day on the radio show saying, like, Jaden Daniels looks in control while he's getting sacked. Like he's back there. He's got it. Oh, he went down. He gets back up. He's fine. It's on to the next play. About the only time that he doesn't look in control is when he takes the cartoonish hits when he's a runner. But outside of that, it's just so calm, cool, collected. But as you've said, and I think you've explained extremely well, like it's easier to look that way when you've got the circumstances he does, the offense, the weapons, the everything. And so it is hard to project, but I tend to agree with you. I like Jaden a lot. I like JJ a lot. I'm intrigued. I won't say I like Drake a lot. I'm just incredibly intrigued. That kind of part of me wants him to take him just so I can be like, all right, let's go on this experiment together. This is going to be fun.
Right.
But I think both in that we're in the same place with Daniels as probably the correct pick. And for anyone that claims to know anything, it seems to be going in the Daniels direction. I say we take Jaden Daniels here for Washington at 2. And so that is what we are going to do. That leaves the New England Patriots at 3. By the way, trades are live during this. So, Logan, if we want to propose any trades, I certainly have some that I have kind of earmarked to throw at you. But if you want to propose anything, by all means, go ahead. New England at 3. Do they stick and pick? Do they take a trade? Where are we at here with Williams and Daniels off the board?
Yeah, I think they for sure stick and pick. I mean, the more you hear people talking around the NFL, it sounds like they're going to pick a quarterback. I think they're uniquely qualified in terms of their roster construction at the moment to take Drake May. They have Jacoby Brissett, a guy that could start for an entire season. I think you feel great about it, right? And I think he's one of the better, if not the best, backup kind of rotational quarterback in the NFL from a leadership, from a mentorship standpoint. So if I'm them, I'm saying, let's go for a home run. Let's not just get on base, because we have the luxury of having him sit for a year. And that's what I would do if I was them. I'd draft Drake May, have him sit for a year, and then and hopefully we get a very special playmaker for 2025.
So I do want to just make a note real quick because I think Nate said this the other day on the Athletic Football Show, and obviously he's Drake's his guy, but I do think this is correct and worth reiterating to our audience as well. You and I both agree that Drake May sitting would probably be best for Drake May, but the idea that he's not ready to play, I think, is like almost a narrative that's taken off in a way that has gone too far. And part of that is Drake is such a good scrambler that he also has a floor underneath him. Now, how he develops as a passer and like where he has to go, I think there's so much room between where he is and his ceiling that sometimes gets misconstrued into like, if he went out and played NFL football tomorrow or in August or September, like he would look lost and he would just like take the snap and curl up in the fetal position. That's not true.
No,
he'd make a ton of mistakes. He'd be able to run around to avoid heinous play. And he could definitely benefit from learning from someone like Brissett. So in optimized circumstances, I do think he probably sits for a while. But the idea that he needs to sit like he can't play right now, I do think is a narrative that perhaps has gotten a bit out of control.
And I think I say that in a perfect world, all 3 of those guys would sit. All 4 of those guys would sit, right? I genuinely believe like quarterbacks that can sit and learn without having to take live bullets for a while is an advantageous situation for the quarterback. So I think that's not an indictment of Drake May when I say that he should sit or that it would be good for him if he did sit. I think it'd be good for Jaden Daniels if he sat. I think it'd be good for JJ. I think it'd be good for Caleb if that was an option on the table, right? I think having to start a young quarterback right away is something that people tend to overlook in terms of how challenging that is. Like, when you look at the complexity of NFL defenses compared to the complexity of college defenses, it's not even in the same sphere. They're not even in the same, like, category. Like, they almost look like they're playing different sports, and they are. And so I think that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, for Drake, like, this is a good situation for a guy who's got some technical issues to sit, get those resolved, but also learn. And I think, like, that's something that, I think we all would have liked to see with Sam Howell, just a little bit more conservative approach with him to help his development along. And so that's what I'm saying with Drake May. Again, I like I said, I like all three of these guys a lot. And I do think him sitting for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it looks like, is going to help his development, because he's not going to have to learn under fire. He's going to be like, oh, this is what cover 6 looks like. This is what they do versus 3-by-1. I think that kind of stuff is the thing that ensures longitudinal success for the quarterback. And I think if you look at the history of quarterback development, I think that holds true. So that's why I say that. It's not to say that Drake is bad or anything like that. It's just that I think if he were given the opportunity to sit, it would behoove him.
For sure. All right. Let's try to get through a couple of these. Well, I guess I want to take a little longer on the quarterbacks, obviously, because that's where Washington is going to be thinking about over the next couple of days as they finalize their decision. I think as we take Drake May officially for the Patriots at 3, I think the Arizona Cardinals, for me, I think they stick and pick. They're going to have calls, but eventually you need players. They already have the extra first from Houston from last year, which didn't work out quite as well for them as they anticipated, as CJ Stroud had the monster rookie year, and now that pick is at 27. But I do think that like a guy like Marvin Harrison, like, you want to find out what you got in Kyler Murray, go get him. Maybe the closest thing we've seen in the draft to Larry Fitzgerald, the Cardinals legend, and let's get Marvin Harrison Jr. That's what I would do here. What about you?
No, I think that's 100% right. I think it just depends on how they grade those other two guys, right? Like, where do they categorize Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze in relation to him? And I think some people probably have Malik Neighbors ahead of him. I think Marvin Harrison is a safer pick. So, for example, if the trade offer is substantial or significant and you're moving down, let's say with Tennessee, hypothetically, I would do it in a heartbeat, because maybe I don't have that much of a differentiation between Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze. But I do agree
assuming that
you.
It's 11, 12, 13, that it's Minnesota, Denver, and Las Vegas searching for a quarterback, I think that's too far.
Yeah, I think it's too far if you're looking for a difference maker, because I think Rome Odunze doesn't get past Chicago at 9, and I think Malik Neighbors is probably off the board to New York, right? So I think, like, you're not going to get any of these significant playmakers, which is a little bit unfortunate if you're Arizona and you're looking for a playmaker. So I'm with you. I think if they're in that 11 range, I don't think they do it. I think they probably stick and pick the best player, outside of Caleb Williams, or the most consistent, definitely the most consistent evaluation of Marvin Harrison Jr.
All right. Number 5, the LA Chargers. This is where we got a ring. We got teams that want to come up and get ahead of the Giants at quarterback. Although one thing that is worth mentioning here, if it goes 1, 2, 3, Williams, Daniels, May, are the Giants gonna, like, they've got Daniel Jones, they've already paid him. Are they a team that's going to want J.J. McCarthy with the way they run an offense, or are they willing to maybe take a swing on someone that's more of a flyer later, and then if it doesn't work out with Daniel Jones this year, they're just like, hey, we'll go into the quarterback draft next year? Like, the idea that you have to get above the Giants, because if you are Minnesota and you are willing to wait, now, of course, you might be fighting off Denver or Vegas, and especially Denver trading up ahead of you, which is always the risk here. But are you willing to wait and take that risk? And then are the Chargers, like, kind of screwed because they probably want to move down with where their needs are and the way this draft board aligns?
Yeah, I think the Chargers probably want to move down. But again, like, if Joe Alt's on the board, do you just take Joe Alt and just put him at right tackle, or Malik Neighbors, who's this dynamic playmaker? I do think they prime trade down candidate. I think part of it is because I think when you look at the offensive lines that Harbaugh has cultivated over the last couple of years, in college, when he was in Stanford, when he was with the 49ers, they are compiled of these kind of really big, nasty kind of dudes. And while I think Joe Alt's a good football player, I don't think that he kind of fits that mold exactly. So I think this is a really interesting opportunity to trade back. But I think you bring up a good point. Like, if you're not convinced that New York's going to take a quarterback and you're Minnesota, why not just wait? I think JJ could hit a little bit of a slide. JJ, Drake, or whoever's not picked could take a little bit of a slide here, barring so another team doesn't trade up. So maybe it behooves them to be patient. I don't know. It's an interesting question for sure.
Because I think if it's Drake, someone's going to go get him. And there are definitely teams that have JJ higher, but there are teams that are going to have Drake 1 on the board.
Sure.
And if that's the case, like, someone's going to go. And I also think that, like, we know Minnesota and Denver love Drake. Like, if they had their druthers, that's who they would pick. If it's Jaden, Vegas is going to do everything. Like, if Vegas could offer their a Ricky Williams, Mike Ditka trade, their entire draft to Washington for Jaden Daniels, they would do that. They're not allowed to do that anymore.
You think it's that level of draft offer?
That's what they would want. They literally aren't allowed to do that. Anymore. I think there are rules against it. But what they will offer, I think, the maximum. Like, Adam Peters is going to have to say no to a big freaking offer from Las Vegas for Jaden Daniels.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean,
that's where Jaden, I think, wants to be, based off the fact that Antonio Pierce is there, and, like, that was the guy who recruited him out of high school. They're still super tight. Like, Jaden Daniels was in the Raiders locker room after they won on week 18.
Wow. Yeah. That's wild.
So it's not, and to be very clear, that does not mean that Jaden, if he's drafted by Washington, is going to tank it because he wants out of here. Like, he's not going to pull an Eli Manning or anything like that either. Like, he'll dedicate his time and be a good teammate and be a professional, because that's who he is. Like, there are no, I think anybody that's got a character concern about Jaden Daniels is misreading tea leaves, and by tea leaves I mean tweets. Yeah. But if this was free agency, I definitely think that's where it would go. And I think that Antonio Pierce, if this was free agency, like, he would convince Mark Davis and Tom Telesco, their general manager, to offer the biggest contract to Jaden Daniels. That absolutely is who they want.
Yeah.
So, and point being, with Jaden off the board, Vegas is less likely to be in that trade mix. So what do we want to do for LA, Telesco's former team, at 5? Do we want to just stick and pick, or do we want to say, all right, Denver or Minnesota is coming up? Or is there, like, I just kind of took a peek at the Jets draft picks. Like, all of a sudden, do they, like, hey, maybe we'll go up and take one of these top receivers ahead of Chicago at 9, for instance? Is there anybody else that you think is an interesting trade up or back partner?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Jets are interesting for the reasons you laid out. Like, there's no team that feels like they're more all in than the Jets right now. But I do think they can get a dynamic playmaker at 10 with Brock Bowers, or an offensive lineman if that's the direction they choose to go. So I don't think there's an urgency there necessarily, not unless they have, Rome Odunze and those guys graded crazy high, which they might. But I think Minnesota's the team that I would definitely have circled here, and I do think they probably like JJ. I just don't know. Do you think New York goes quarterback? That's the thing to me that is a little bit dubious at the moment. Like, they could get a really good playmaker here for Daniel Jones, and, like, for a staff that needs to win now. You know what I mean? The staff that needs to win now.
If I think of Dable and Drake is falling, and he's like kind of a Josh Allen prototype kind of player, right? He's in that mold. Then maybe. I don't know that JJ, like, fits what they do in the same way that a Drake May does. Now, maybe Dable would change what they do and be a little bit more, like, play action heavy and kind of the stuff that JJ seems to be awesome at. But I tend to agree with you too. Like, they committed to Daniel Jones 1 year ago.
Yeah.
And then he got hurt. So why wouldn't you give him the best chance possible to succeed?
And the thing is, like, do you feel like that staff's on the hot seat? And if they are on the hot seat, then you have to go with Daniel Jones. And then I would almost say you have to draft the best playmaker available. So I don't think they're going to take a quarterback. And then I don't think Tennessee's going to take a quarterback. And you go down the list, and it falls to Minnesota. So if I'm Minnesota right now, I don't feel a sense of urgency after looking at that kind of relationship with Dayball and, the longitudinal success of that organization. So if I don't know if there's an opportunity for the Chargers to trade down. So if I'm them, I'm probably taking who I think is the best player on the board, and that's Malik Neighbors. Now, I don't know if Harbaugh feels that same way, and if it's Harbaugh at that spot, you're probably picking the best offensive lineman available. A lot of people have that as Joe Alt. To me, Talisi Fuaga screams Harbaugh. Like, there's not a more Harbaugh-type player in this draft. And so I think he'd want to probably trade out, but it feels like, just from a play style, he'd be the guy that they'd pick there. That's what I would think.
Do we want to get crazy and take Talisi Fuaga at 5? I mean, does that sound crazy when you say it out loud? Talisi Fuaga, top 5 pick?
No, I mean, he's one of my favorite offensive players in the draft, and I think the thing about him that I like is the one qualm I have about him is that is he a true right tackle? Is he a true right tackle? And I don't know. I think he reminds me a little bit of Brandon Sheriff. Is that I was
going to say it sounds familiar.
That he could be an excellent guard, but I do think they're okay. They drafted Zion a couple years ago. He's playing guard for them. They've done a great job kind of building that group up. So you do need like a right tackle type of player. Is that him? And I don't know. He just, in terms of running the football, there's not a more physical dude when it comes to that in this draft. And so if you're going to run the ball a lot, like I think Harbaugh's going to, that's the guy I'm probably going to go with.
If we had traded down to 11 or 12, that's the guy that I would have circled for them. Let's just do it. Talisi Fuaga, 5. Okay, 6. Malik Neighbors, Giants. I don't know that we have to belabor that anymore.
No, I think that's easy. He's the most talented player on the board right now. So
all right, 7. Titans. Do they just go Joe Alt / do we go Joe Alt in the way that everyone seems to be putting Joe Alt there?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question because like we talked about this before with Callahan and the guys that he likes, and in terms of he tends to value guys that are a little bit more bendy, a little bit more athletic. So I don't know. I don't know if you go Joe Alt here. I mean, his upside's tremendous, but I've talked to a couple of people. They're not all in on Joe Alt the way that the media is, and I think Joe Alt's a great prospect. He's a pretty clean evaluation, but in terms of upside, I don't know how you feel about it. So
I was listening to a pod the other day. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Danny Kelly from The Ringer was on with Mays during a pod they were doing on the Athletic Football Show, and like Alt was a tight end not that long ago.
Right.
So he's already this good and this clean of an evaluation, and he is a good athlete. And maybe he's lost some of his athleticism and some of his bendiness, from being a tight end as he's put on the weight to become a tackle. Like you would know that better than me from watching O-line tape.
Right.
But he's got some of the same intrigue with Drake May, where you're like, man, this guy's really raw because he hasn't been playing the position nearly as long as some of these other guys have been playing it their whole lives. So there is an upside element there.
Sure.
That is intriguing.
The other thing I just want to point out there is Brian Callahan was part of that staff in Cincinnati. Which drafted Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell. And so if I'm looking at like guys that I feel really good about, like Roma Dunze, I feel great about. And I think with a young quarterback like, Will Levis, a guy that likes to throw 50-50 contested catch balls. Obviously Hopkins is on the last year of his deal there. Like that's probably the direction I go. Honestly, if I'm them looking at this board, that's probably what I would do. And I know Tennessee fans are going to freak out about that, but
they just signed Ridley. That's the only thing that do you sign Ridley?
I don't know if that stops me from signing him, honestly.
Okay.
I really
Let's
don't
do
know.
it.
Yeah.
Screw it. Roma Dunze, Tennessee. This is becoming a wacky mock draft, and I love it. Okay. 8, Falcons. Dallas Turner is the most mocked pick here.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw 2 other names at you that I think are interesting. One is Byron Murphy. Who we're going to talk about again, possibly with Chicago if we don't take him here. But a explosive defensive tackle who is he's a beast. And he's been associated with, if he falls to the Rams to replace Aaron Donald. Well, who was the DC in LA for a bunch of the last years when Aaron Donald was awesome was Raheem Morris, who's now the head coach in Atlanta. And the other one would be Kenyon Mitchell if they decide to go outside instead of inside at corner. I also know, obviously, Laiatu Latu is your favorite pass rusher in this draft and is everybody's favorite pass rusher outside of the medical. So those are kind of the 4 names in the mix here for me. Turner, who's kind of the obvious upside super athlete, not quite as productive as Latu for sure, not nearly as polished, but there's higher upside at the position that it seems like they need the most. Latu, if their medical team clears him, could be the pick here.
Right.
Or do you go off the board with one of those other 2 guys?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, in terms of defensive personnel, like I really like all of those guys. I really do, and I think they're guys that are gonna make a difference for you right away. And I like, honestly, I like them better than Dallas Turner. I know people are really high on Dallas Turner, and I'm high on Dallas Turner too, but I do think he's more of a projection than people want to acknowledge. So I think if I was going to make the pick, and obviously if medical's good, I'd go Latu here. But, we don't know the medical, so then I'd probably go Byron Murphy. But I do also think, like, you bring up a great point with Quinyon Mitchell. Like, he is a fun player to watch, man. And he's just handled this pre-draft process so well. And he's got that elite speed, that elite click and close ability. He's got great ball production in college. So, like, kind of everything you want from a corner there, I think you feel pretty good about. I don't know. I think your point you bring up about having Aaron Donald, and this is not Aaron Donald. Let's just be very clear about the
Of course, no one
not
is.
Aaron Donald, but he's a good football player, and I do think he mimics a lot of what Grady Jarrett does at a high level. They're very similar football players, so getting them in the same room together, having them learn from each other, or having Byron Murphy learn from the
Grady
guy that's
Jarrett.
already there. Thank you.
Yeah,
I think would be awesome. So I would probably lean that way ever so slightly, just because it feels like a get on base type of pick. I think it just makes a lot of sense for how that team's constructed. But I don't know. It's tough. This is a tough pick for me here because they can't go offensive line, right? Because
let me offer another alternative then. What
Okay.
if Minnesota decides, hey, this is we've gone far enough. We're a little scared that someone's going to trade up. Chicago's willing to potentially trade back. And maybe Denver's getting like, hey, they're getting itchy too. Minnesota's now at a point that they don't have to give up both firsts to move.
Sure.
So if you're Minnesota here and you want to give up, let's say 11 and 108, they don't have a second, which kills them. They don't have a second next year either, which is like the true killer. But you give up 11, 108 for 8. Like, if you're Atlanta, are you willing to dump back? Minnesota gets to come up and take JJ at 8.
Yeah, and just to be clear, there's all the three receivers are gone. They don't need offensive line help. They've made big investments there. They could go defense, but I do think if you trade back, 4 spots, you're going to get one of those guys, and you probably feel pretty good about it. So this seems like a good trade for Atlanta. It just depends on whether you think Minnesota would be willing to do that or not. Just be patient and wait for that pick to fall to them.
If I'm Atlanta, I'm calling Denver too. And then I call
Right.
Minnesota. I'm like, hey, just so you know, we're about to trade with Denver. Do you want to come up instead? Because they're going to take McCarthy.
Sure.
And at which point Minnesota's probably got the better offer.
Sure.
Denver doesn't have a 2 this year. They could offer you. They could offer you a higher pick. Denver could actually steal McCarthy here.
Yeah.
Potentially. I guess the other way that Minnesota could prevent that is if they went one future one, which really is not ideal for them.
Sure.
But how do you want to play that? If I'm Atlanta and those are my 2 offers, it's pretty easy for me to take 12 and 76 over 11 and 108.
Yeah, I'd probably go 12 and 76, honestly.
So Minnesota then gets shut out of the quarterback.
Yeah, which would be wild.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oof, which feels like it's absolutely not going to happen.
It could happen, though. I think that's the crazy thing about the draft, right?
Are we doing this, or are we going to offer Minnesota? If you're Questy, do you call fine? We'll do one, either 11 and 23, and that's it, or 11 and 1 next year. Would you do that if you're Minnesota?
Man, if they did that'd be so wild. Do you think they could get away with going like what was it? It's 11, 108, and then another 5th round pick or something like that this year. Would that be better value, or is that?
I don't know I'd have to pull out a chart and do math, and that's sure as hell not.
Yeah, I
right
definitely
now.
think Minnesota, if that happened, they'd probably give up both ones, I think, to move up, which would be absolutely insane. It would
which
be
is kind of
insane.
a bit of a you played yourself kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then again, hey, if you have to give up just the 2 1s to get to 8 versus 2 1s and your future one to get to 3 or 4, that's
not
still a
bad
win.
idea. Yeah, still a win.
All right, so we're going to go 11 and 23.
Yeah.
But also, I guess what you could do is you could do 11, 23, and let's get 79.
For next
Or maybe not. See, this is when the PFF thing gets silly. I'm going to do 79. I'm just going to force the trade. But so something like that, where Atlanta's given up it's 2 for 2, but it's 2 1s for a 1 and a 3, or maybe it's a future 3. Let's just do that. We're gonna force this trade, and bang, Minnesota's on the clock, and JJ. Now you take JJ McCarthy.
Yeah.
Okay, so that leaves Chicago at 9.
They're so pissed probably this happened.
To an extent. I think that they're definitely pissed, but they have their choice of pass rusher, and they also have Byron Murphy on the board. So Chicago now, to pair with Caleb Williams, gets the best defensive player in the draft, however they grade it, because Kenyon Mitchell could be their guy. Like, they've got endless possibilities here.
And they
could also get a playmaker in Brock Bowers.
This is the one I wonder if you just take Joe Alt here, because he's the best player on your board. You don't
That's
think he's
also true.
There. Like, they have a left tackle who's good, but this could be a guy that's like a generational piece to kind of protect Caleb Williams. So that's probably the direction I'd go here if I was them. And I know they have a guy, but I think that shouldn't stop you from drafting a guy like Joe Alt. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And obviously that would bookend tackles for the next decade if they get them both right, because they got Darnell Wright last year. All right, let's go Joe Alt then. The Jets are then pissed because they're like, yeah, we got Joe Alt. No, we don't have Joe Alt.
Right.
Which now means they have the same selection of tackles that everybody has given them, plus Brock Bowers. Which direction do you think they go? Tackle or Bowers?
This to me feels like Brock Bowers is home to me the whole time. Like, just having the offense kind of being all in the way they are, the way Aaron Rodgers can maximize guys over the middle of the field. I think that's the direction you have to go.
Okay, Brock Bowers, Atlanta 11. Now you got the same. See, this is how it works for Atlanta. They're psyched because they still got Murphy. They still could go Dallas Turner or Latu the way we have it right now, or Kenyon Mitchell. So which of those? Same discussion, but now I'm going to make you pick one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go. Again, Latu's the highest rated guy on my board at this point. Like, like my board is somewhat relative. Like, I don't know the injury history, but his film is so good. And I think he's a difference maker. He's a difference maker off the edge. So that's the direction I would go.
And he was, just to kind of prove the point on the medical, at UW, they medically retired him. He went to UCLA. Yeah. They were like, nope, you're good. And he played. And it could go, like John Allen had injury questions coming out. And then all of a sudden, he's still playing and is playing well. Leighton Vander Esch had neck issues coming out, and he just retired 5 years into his career. So we'll see which way it goes with Latu, who does have some neck issues that are there. Okay, Broncos 12 is we gotta scoot through the rest of this thing.
Scoot. So I just wanted to see who they had at DB. Honestly, that's what I was checking out right now. So I don't know. Having could you imagine Patrick Surtain and Quinyon Mitchell with each other? Like here at this pick, that just seems like a devastating combination, especially in that division. That's probably the direction I would go. Honestly.
All right, so Kenyon Mitchell. Do the Raiders take Penix here? I think this is too rich. I think they go a different direction. If I was them, I would go whoever the best lineman on my board is here, because you have all of them except for Alt available.
Right.
So Fatanu.
Troy Fatanu would be awesome. Olu Fashanu. Yeah, I'd probably go Troy Fatanu just because he gives you so much flexibility across the front. Yeah, again, I love him as a prospect, so easy pick there.
I think Saints, same thing. I'm going back to O-tackle. I think.
Oh, dude, if Fashanu's here, yeah, they're doing backflips, right? Because they haven't been able to figure out left tackle. Their right tackle's retiring. They're feeling pretty good about it.
Done. All right. This is an interesting spot for sure. I think the Colts are dying for Kenyon Mitchell to fall. He does it. To me, this comes down to, it says right here, needs wide receiver at DB. Do you give Anthony Richardson, Brian Thomas Jr. to launch footballs to the moon to?
Oh, my God.
Brian, run. Anthony, throw. Or do you go DB and take like a Terrian Arnold, who's probably the best corner on the board now that Mitchell's gone?
I mean, or do you go Dallas Turner here? I mean, like in terms of traits, like you guys, I know
that's a fast guy on that turf.
That's not a need for them, but they do like guys with tremendous traits, and he is a guy that I think is tremendously gifted. That'd be pretty wild, honestly. That'd be pretty cool for them. I'm trying to see. Yeah, I'd go Dallas Turner here. I would.
Okay, I like that. Which probably, man, the Seahawks are like, yes, no, because they've got a need at edge. I could see them going Jared Verse here.
Yeah.
I could see
they
them
need
going.
O-line. They need guard, right? Go to offensive line real quick.
They do need guard. So this is another interesting spot for a Graham Barton potentially, Or J.C. Latham if you think he's a guard.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, obviously they're under a new regime there, but I do think that one of the things they've done at guard is they just get these massive people moving guards, and J.C. Latham is that. And I think he could project outside to you if you needed to, right? Like, let's say, for example, you draft Christian Haynes later, then you get a guy who's pretty good at football. That feels like a Seattle pick there to me.
All right, Jacksonville at 17. This is definitely a spot to watch, I think, for Cooper DeJean. They need DB help.
Yeah.
And whether it's corner or safety, he could do either. They also could go interior lineman. They could go edge with Verse. They could go wide receiver as well, as they obviously lost Ridley in the offseason.
Yeah,
Probably too rich for any of the receivers that are here, unless they lost Brian Thomas.
Yeah, Brian Thomas would be interesting here in terms of playmaker, but I feel like the value right now in the draft is at DB with Terrion Arnold or Cooper DeJean. Like, kind of your flavor goes there. I think this feels a little rich to me for Cooper DeJean, but I will say this: Terrion Arnold and Cooper DeJean are very similar players in terms of like they're both kind of slot players. I think Cooper DeJean brings more flexibility to your defense, so it just depends on how you want to use him and what kind of playmaker you think he's going to be for you. So I would leave that to you, Craig.
I'm gonna go Terrion Arnold. I think probably the better chance of playing outside corner,
Sure.
even if both guys could wind up as slot, nickel, hybrid type of players. I think Terrion Arnold's got the better chance outside, so I'm gonna go the more traditional corner there. Bengals at 18.
So if interior defensive lineman
is so happy right now.
Yeah, I'd probably go Byron Murphy, honestly. Unless Marius Mims is the next graded tackle. They brought in Trent Brown, and they have Orlando Brown there, so they are okay. They can get through a season with those guys. So I think you go, hey, best player available is probably Byron Murphy. Feel pretty good about that.
I don't know that Murphy's going to be available for them at 18. I think we've made a mistake somehow to let him get that
But
far.
every time you do a mock draft, like that always happens. You're like, this guy's still here? Like, what is happening? Like, what's going on? So
yeah. But then exactly. All right. So Rams on the clock at 19. They could go Mims if they wanted to go tackle, but I think Johnny Newton out of Illinois at defensive tackle to be that kind of that 3-tech replacement for Donald is probably the right guy here.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this feels a little bit rich for me, but I know they like obviously PFF really likes Newton. What else do they need? They need quarterback, tackle, D-line, linebacker,
corner. I mean, they've done well with some of these move pieces before. And a guy like DeJean is interesting there.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, DeJean there, I think that has some familiarity with kind of that Jalen Ramsey, like hybrid slot type guy. Like, he would be excellent in that role, I think. And again, I don't know what their defensive scheme looks like with Raheem Morris moving on, but that flexibility in that defense, and they need to get better in the back end. And again, I think Cooper's perfect for that. So that's probably what I would do if I was them.
Buy me another 5 seconds here let's see. They brought in Chris Shula to be their new defensive coordinator, but didn't they bring Brandon Staley back too, or where did he wind up?
I don't know. That's a great question.
Wait, that's right. He went to San Fran. So he's there. But yeah, I'll go DeJean. I'm down for that. All right, 20 Steelers. Wide receiver, they could go Brian Thomas Jr. For sure. The other big one is center that a lot of people have going there, or tackle.
This
so you could go Mims, you could go Graham Barton. Yeah,
Graham Barton to me. I think Graham Barton, people sleep on him. He's just, to me, he's like the most get on base pick of all time for them.
Yes, agreed. All right, Miami. Do they go tackle? I mean, let's see who we got. We got Mims. Yeah, Mims would be the tackle here.
So interesting, but stylistically, because they run so much outside zone, I don't know if Mims fits. Does that make sense? What I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
I think they might
100%.
want to go a different direction. So defensive interior. This might honestly, like, depending on how they evaluate Newton, like, I think this is a little high for him, but it fills the need. He's a good player. He's a nice penetrator. He's got a good feel. Maybe that's it. Who are the other interior players here?
Let's see. I mean, I think Newton's the clear next guy.
Yeah.
We can look. I would also say, God, if Barton drops to them with what they do,
yeah, they would love Barton.
That's like a home run.
But
yeah,
I'm saying interior guard
offensive
or center.
lineman?
Yeah.
You're looking at like Jackson Powers Johnson, Zach Frazier, Christian Haynes, so probably a little rich for those guys.
Yeah, probably. So yeah, I'd probably go Newton here. That feels like a good spot for him.
Feels worth mentioning that maybe if Miami doesn't like anybody, like could Washington trade up to 21 and get Mims, and give up a third, because remember Miami's third is gone because this cap stuff that they had, they got stripped. So they definitely would be interested. Do we want to do that? Or is this a little rich, do you think, to give up?
I think it's a little rich, honestly. And honestly, just to be clear, I do think that Guyton and Mims both could take a little bit of a slide. And so I'm not saying they're going to get all the way through here, but let's say, for example, you wanted to trade with Atlanta. Like, because let's say, just hypothetically, like Philly takes Guyton here. I do think that, hypothetically, we don't have to do that, but I'm just saying, like, then you would trade with Atlanta and be in a better spot to get that taken care of, I think.
Yeah. All right. So Philly, Verse is probably the best player on the board. They definitely could use some help at DB. So a guy like Nate Wiggins.
I love Nate Wiggins for them. The only problem is he's not a big tackler, but I think Nate Wiggins as a fit from a coverage standpoint in the division, especially with like CeeDee Lamb, like he's the best cover player in the draft. Now, corner is more than just coverage, but he's a very dynamic player in that regard.
I'm definitely good with going Wiggins there for Philly. All right, so Atlanta at 23 off the trade with Minnesota. What did we give them at 11? We gave them Latu at 11. Yeah. Man, they could go Latu and Verse if they really wanted to.
Crazy. Do you go like who do you go like Brian Mitchell here? That'd be insane.
Brian Thomas.
Sorry.
You could go Brian. The kickoff return is back in vogue. So going Brian Mitchell. I mean,
yeah. Wouldn't be a bad deal.
B-Mitch could still run it back. I think honestly, do you just go Verse?
That'd be pretty wild. That would be, or do you trade out of this spot? Like I said, this is an interesting spot because if you want to tackle, like Amarius Mims is a hypothetical. Washington could trade up to this spot, get ahead of Dallas, get ahead of Green Bay, who are probably both taking offensive linemen. Right? This might not be a bad look at that. A little bit lower, but I don't know. What would it take for them to get up there?
Let's see. If we gave, I would do 36 and 100 to get here in a second. I don't know if that's actually rich enough. I feel like you probably have to do 36 and 78.
Yeah.
Maybe you get a fifth or something back.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. I would do that. That feels pretty good. I don't know if that actually happens, but I would do that. And what we're talking about is 36 and 78 for 23 and 143. I would do that in a second.
Okay. Let's do it then.
And then I would take Mims here.
Yeah.
And it's not even a question to me.
Done. Okay, cool. Atlanta's just stacking picks. All right. So that Dallas now heartbroken because Mims is no longer available. Where do they go?
Who's the best? Who's the best offensive lineman available at the moment for them?
The best offensive lineman would be either Jordan Morgan, Tyler. I could see Guyton going there for sure.
Doesn't Guyton feel like such a Dallas pick? It feels like a little bit of a reach, but like he feels like such a Dallas, like kind of the left tackle apparent, like super traitsy upside guy. It's a little high again because he's only played like 14 games and he was a little bit raw last year, but shoot, man, like that feels like a Dallas pick, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna go that. And then 25
furious probably because they don't get anybody.
Yes. So we could either go like Jordan Morgan and Kingsley Suamataia. Man, they are really not having a good time there in Green Bay, and we got to make a pick.
Yeah, no doubt. Jackson Powers Johnson's interesting. This seems a little bit high for him. How about safety? Is there any safeties available? And Tyler Newman would be one, but I think that seems a little bit
way rich for him.
Yeah.
Who's the best player available? Verse? Do they just take Jared Verse?
They took a defensive lineman last year, but again, and I think so.
Brian Thomas Jr. Do they need? They don't really need a receiver.
Lucas Van Ness could probably play inside for you a little bit, and then Jared. You can't have too many pass rushers, right? You can't.
Okay, let's just go that. Which of course,
I know Green Bay fans are probably furious, but that's the way to go. I think
you get a dude who should have been or could have been drafted 10 picks ago. You shouldn't be furious.
Right.
26. This is where everyone is mocking Chop Robinson.
Really?
Is there someone else that you would prefer here?
Well, let's see what they need. Tight end go. They need a whole bunch of people, don't they?
I mean, you could also say like Jackson Powers Johnson would be a pretty easy fit for them here.
Honestly, like this is one of those things where I don't know if Jackson Powers Johnson's a first round player. I really don't. Depending on your evaluation of Adonai Mitchell, like Kool-Aid McKinstry is interesting. This is when I did a mock draft last night. This is the spot I found was the most difficult because I had all these guys that I don't really consider to be first round players that all of a sudden need to go in the first round, which to me makes it really tough. So it's kind of like. I like Kool-Aid.
Then I'm just gonna say we're just gonna go with the Chop Robinson pick that everyone else is going with here.
Really, look at you, just going crazy.
I'm just doing it. All right, Arizona at 27. Oh my God, Brian Thomas Jr. Are you kidding me?
Who'd they take who'd they take it for?
Marvin Harrison.
Could you imagine? Oh my God, that would be disgusting.
But he feels like the best player on the board, and
he does feel like the best player on the board.
I get you could go somewhere else, but why? Unless they do need a center. So again, JPJ could be the move there.
Let's go JPJ so that Buffalo can get their
so they get Brian Thomas Jr.
They get Brian Thomas Jr. Yeah.
Lucky sons of guns. All right. Then who you want at 29?
To me, this feels like a Darius Robinson pick.
I agree with you. Darius Robinson. 30, Baltimore.
So they might go. I think an interesting pick for them would be, scroll down a little bit, Craig, would be Jordan Morgan potentially here.
I agree. I think that's either. I think Morgan goes either 30 or 31.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go 30 for Baltimore, 31 for San Francisco.
This is really interesting because I think Jordan Morgan is like the guy I would totally slot in there. Interior offensive player. Do you go Kool-Aid here? He's the best corner that I have. Maybe TJ Tampa was another guy that I would just throw out there. But guard would be Christian Haynes. Maybe a little rich for him.
Feels rich.
But it does. But I do think that kind of stuff happens, right? Like let's say you have a better evaluation on him than somebody else. I'm just throwing situations out there for all those San Fran fans out there. But
yeah,
I'd probably go Kool-Aid.
All right, let's go Kool-Aid, and then Kansas City's jumping for joy. 80 Mitchell's the pick. So that's our mock draft. That's it. We did it. That is our final mock. We'll have more coverage, obviously, all week long here on Take Command. We will hopefully be able to go live Thursday night. It's going to depend on what my situation is in Detroit, but we'll definitely have something for you Friday morning in the feed. We also are hoping to record something a little extra on the Commanders pick before the draft, but again, schedules are crazy, so we'll see what we can do. Thanks for listening. Leave some comments with some feedback on this, and we'll see you as we are in draft week here on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command, which has a brand new home.
That's right. You can watch on YouTube at the Team 980.
You can also listen to full episodes in the free Odyssey app, which is now enabled with Apple CarPlay. So we'll just, follow you around.